here's the back off. I've removed the back. Here, take it off here. So this is the 120 back. So all I have is a 120 in the back. All right, so to get the back off, you have to lift up the side leather, which is glued down, and there's 2 screws. There's yeah, you can see there's where the screws go in. There's 2 on that side, 1 right there, which is underneath here. Actually, yeah, it's right there. And then there is 1 down here, which is under here. And here's where the slide comes out, right here. So that, you have to take this plunger handle off, which has 4 screws that screw through and then they've got little nuts on them also. Little bitty nuts right there. You have to take the back latch off, which is underneath of this, and to get it off, you have to take the pressure plate off of this side, and this is the pressure plate, and it sits here like so. Well, I don't know that you would have to, because you can reach through this hole and take a screw loose on the back side of that, but I wound up taking it off anyway because I had to push really hard to get that to pop out. This lock-unlock handle, because it's a tight fit, and then the screw rolled away, so I took this off. In which there are, be careful on these, because there are springs, some point with underneath of there, and there's little washers that space them up, and then the springs. So anyhow, when we go back together, we'll get better pictures of that. But so here's the reason why this wouldn't cycle through. There's a plastic wear plate, I'm gonna call it that, under here that's worn, and it, as this plunger slides, you can see, and it's, you know, obviously this plunger would be held down by the case. This here piece right here is what cocks your trigger or your shutter. But so there's a wear plate here. You can see the very end of it, plastic sticking out on the top, and then down here. And so what was happening is I could only pull this out, you know, a little ways, and it wouldn't go any further. And it just wouldn't go any further because I've already taken it off, but it was taken just like here. When you push it back, it pushed up another piece. It had this big bunch of stuff wadded up here, and it still doesn't want to pull because it seems like it's really tight right here. But anyhow, so I am going to go ahead and take this apart, and to do that, on the back side there is a screw right here, and then there's one underneath of this plate here, and it goes through, and you can't just turn the nut on this side. It was epoxy held, the epoxy broke loose on it. So I'll have to take this apart over here and get this out. Should put this on the tripod. But so I'll have to take this these 3 screws out for this tensioner. That screw, this one, and that one. So there's 4 screws on this plate here, and these, and then this will lift off. Doesn't look like I'm going to have to take this out. I think I'll be able to get it out without taking this clutch apart. Then this will lift out, and I can get to that screw. And the reason I know that there's a screw under here is I took this clutch apart because I thought that was the problem. Took the clutch off and it still wouldn't slide, and so I thought, well, maybe there's something under here. Took all this apart, and I'd already had this pressure plate off, and no, but I did see that screw, and it did have epoxy on it. This one, I already put my screwdriver in that and loosened it some. This one I know is in here, and it's got epoxy because I remember seeing it and wondering if it was an adjustment or something, but it's not. Well, tentative, or I guess it would be, because that's probably a tension on that. So anyhow, it's pretty well, there's a lot going on back here in this film holder for sure. Here's your indicator that right here that turns green when you're ready to use, when you've already cycled. Here's your film counter. Comes your window. Here's the little lock. As you cycle through the film, you change the amount of film you move, because going from a smaller spool or a small spool to a big spool, and as you wind the film, it gets bigger on the one side that was small before, so then it takes less amount of turns to move the film the same distance. So they've metered that in. So this is the little lock that at one point pops up. See at 8, I think it's at 6 or so probably, when it comes up, and only allows it to wind to go back in this far. And then when it gets to 10, your last shot, then it drops into here and locks, so you can't do anything, and you know you're out of film until you press this switch. I don't remember one way or the other, which moves this to allow that to drop back down, and you start all over again and cycle back through on your numbers. So, and I'm not sure what these pieces do yet, but there's significant wear. This has been a problem going on for quite some time. When I first took the cover off of this, it had graphite, old graphite lube in here. In some places, I mean, but not obviously where it should be. So I just took electrical contact cleaner because it doesn't damage any plastics or anything. Not that there's plastics in here, but I didn't. That's what I used. Well, that's plastic, and so is that. And cleaned it out. So then I'll figure out what I'm going to do for lubricant on it when it goes back together. So what I'm going to do now is I'll get that torn apart, take this off, take my wear plate, this plastic wear plate. You can see it's pretty thin. And my options for that, I have cottage cheese lid, so I can cut a piece out of it. I think it's too thick. It's definitely thicker than that. I've got this piece of pattern plastic from Joann's Fabric, which Seems pretty robust. But it seems a little thicker. And then I've got this label tray, plastic label thing, and it's plastic, and it seems closer to the thickness of that. I don't know how long this will wear, but that's my plan is to replace that. It looks like it was cemented down, so I'll have to clean all that up and see if I can put some rubber cement on that to hold that down. But that's where this is at. Pretty complex little machine. Oh, and I was looking for a manual on this particular back, and I couldn't find it. I found a manual, a PDF file of a different back, but it's different. It's a significant amount different. So we're gonna wing it. Okay, I have removed the back plate, or this little plate, underneath the spool, the take-up spool area. This little pressure plate was also above that. Took that off first, took that. And as you can see, I'm shining the light back in there. In that corner is the other screw. And you can see the epoxy on it is broken loose. Maybe. There. So at one point it was epoxied, so you wouldn't have to tear it apart, I suppose, to adjust it. So anyhow, oh, and be careful with this part. This is spring-loaded, so you can take your spool in and out, so it slides down like that. You've got to lift this up a little bit to be able to get the plate, this little plate out here. And it's held in with a spring hooked over that little eye, a little post, and I would guess on the opposite side here is a little post. I'm going to guess that if that pops off of there, that spring will probably go clear across the room. Just thinking, probably wouldn't find it. And if you did, it'd be probably really tough to get put back on. So keep that in mind. I may actually put a piece of tape over that, packing tape, just to hold that there. Because the only thing holding it is that spring. So then now I can take that screw loose and see what we got there. Also, if you can come up with a pair of little tweezers, it makes it really nice, because you can, as you're taking the screws loose, as you start threading it, unthreading it, you can put these around below the head, on the threads below, and then finish unscrewing it, and it doesn't fall and roll under something. You can just pick it up and then put it in your tray. And it works real good for putting them back too. So we have our, whatever this is called, slide off. First I thought it was bent, but I believe it's designed that way, has this ramp. Has something to do with this part here, but I took off this was on top, and it had this extra little brass shim here for some reason. I don't know what that would be. And then here's the little plastic spacer on top. it seems pretty good, except for this corner is all a little chewed up. But it was that way. That's the direction it was. Chewed up was towards this back side here. So that was glued. Try to clean that up. And see what my best options for a replacement. I'm guessing it's this clear stuff. But anyway, so I'll get that cut out. Yeah, I don't know if I should make a new one of these or not sure. I guess I should probably. Seems a little worse for wear on that corner. I get some rubber cement probably. Get that stuck down nice. Alright, well, I guess my options are what I have. This plastic is probably the closest I have. Yeah, it feels pretty much the same thickness. So I'm going with it. And I'll be back. So for reference, should you be doing this on your camera, exact piece of material you need to get is a label container of Avery color coding labels, 6720, 480 count, 1/4 inch diameter, hand write only. So anyway, the only reason I say that is because it feels the exact same thickness. I have nothing to measure with, but it feels the same thickness, and you stick it in there, you get just the right amount of plastic to cut one piece out of. It does have this paper label on the outside, which I think I'll remove because that's going to make it thicker in some area than the other, but that's what I've got, and I think it's going to work. How durable is it? I don't know. These suckers are tough to rip open, so I'm hoping they're pretty durable. There's my plastic. Is it perfect? Close enough, I hope. Some of it was missing. So I just kind of went from about ballpark. Yes, would it seemed okay. I may have a little more plastic than needed at this end, but I don't know. And so it had 2 holes punched here for some reason, and 2 there. I know those reasons. I think they're metric, but I used 3/16 inch hole punch there and 1/4 inch right there, and just punched through the plastic. Then I cleaned the glue off, and then I took some 150 grit sandpaper, roughed this up, kind of cleaned it up, and it's not really rough, but it's got a paint on it, so I kind of give it a little bit of something, hopefully, for the glue to stick to that I have, and then I did the same thing on this plastic. And that paper didn't want to peel off, so I just left it. I sanded it to make it somewhat acceptable to some cement. And what I'll do now is I'll put some cement on here and some cement on the back of this. Let it get tacky, and then do my best to get it laid down there where it needs to be so it is permanent. then I will go on and address probably cutting a piece of plastic for this and punching some holes. Cement. I laid this down, traced around it with a pencil so I kind of knew where to put my glue or cement, and then laid this on a piece of cardboard. This side I wanted down, and put some glue on it with this little brush I had, and it's kind of about where we want it. It's tacky. You could use, this is cement, rubber cement for shoes and such. You could use shoe goo, I would think. So now I'm just going to line up and set, because once this sets, gets just a tiny little bit of contact, it will stick, I hope. That's what it's supposed to do. So, and there we have it. I'm just going to put some pressure on it. It gives every bit of that glue or that cement a chance to hang on for dear life. And hold. So that's kind of about full in. Yeah, it's caught. Okay, and then it'll slide. Something like that. Okay. I guess I'm gonna fix that. It may be worth paying attention to the fact that this copper plate, the holes are not exactly centered. So, and it did come off with the holes, I guess, closest to the outside edge, the closest to the clutch, because that's how I laid it up here. And it is not precisely centered. So, there's a reason for that, I guess. I don't know what it is. Here's my piece of plastic I cut. Just punched two 3/16 inch holes that match that and that. I didn't punch those. I don't know why they're there. I've got to think that perhaps maybe there's another model of camera back that may have 4 bolts or something, but I didn't punch those other two. Could have, but didn't. Because this is the second one of these that I did. The first one seemed pretty brittle, and I was messing with it and it cracked right at one of the holes. So I decided not to put more holes in it than I think's needed at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble it. And I was thinking about this situation here with the locking nut, or the shouldered nut, flange nut thing here. And I was like, well, why would they do that? And I've got to think it's because you would tighten it down with a screwdriver and then your spanner wrench or O-ring or snap ring pliers or whatever you've got, and once you finally get your drag right on that, the tension, then is when you'd come in and you would lock down with this lock nut on the outside. So that's probably what the thinking on that is. And so I guess now what I need to do is get this one unepoxied, get the epoxy out of this one here. Get that one popped loose so I can go ahead and set the tension up right. So I'll do that, and then I guess reassemble this like so. This will set like that, and then we'll have that, which will have to slide over there, and then we'll have this copper plate on top, and this little brass washer. And I don't know what that washer's for, that shim. It's very thin, so I've got to think it's to, I don't know, a spacer, I guess, but either that or it was supposed to have another one over here and somebody's taken it apart and lost it. I don't know, but that's how it went, so it's how I'm going to go back with it. Okay, I think I figured out why there's a shim. So this shoulder guide washer is what centers, what allows this rail to ride where it needs to ride. And it appears to be about the same thickness as the rail that it's got to guide. And that's a little longer, but so that will come down against here, and then I suppose that allowed it even, let's see, that would be shorter, so that allowed it to be a little tighter back here, because maybe there was extra slap in there or something. So I don't know, but we're going to put it back that same way. That's stuck. So anyhow, alright, I have it stuck back together. And when I said that the narrow side went up on this, it doesn't. It goes, I had it like this when I took it apart. So the narrow side goes down here, because when I set this on there the other way, it was coming up against these pieces here. This copper was. Now, another issue that I have found is when I had this tight and I tried to bring it back up, it would get to here and it would stick. It wouldn't go. I can loosen it up until this would lift up above this. This shoulder on this bolt was not sliding through here very well, and you can see where it's been forcing it to jump up over. So I think it's been adjusted to allow it to hop up over there, and it shouldn't. And I took a screwdriver, a bigger one than this, but stuck it in and tweaked it a little bit and opened it up. And I believe probably what's happened is this got pulled out and jammed up against something, and somebody just started banging on the handle of that plunger and allowed it to bend up. There appears to be a lot more slack here, so I've got to think that this is also bent, because I don't think that this should have so much slack. But I don't know. I'll go ahead and tighten it down and play with it, but I just think that that's incorrect. So we'll find out, but anyway. Okay, took it back apart again, because this is rough. This piece here has to bang into against, or has been banging into that, a little piece there, because I think something was out of line, it's been bent, and this is right here is really rough, and it's already marking up this plastic, so that's what commenced to eat this up here. So I'm going to take a file and clean that up, and then probably take some sandpaper, polish it up some, and then down to maybe some emery cloth to take it nice smooth so it'll slide without eating that plastic up. Too bad. And I did take my water pump pliers, because a water pump and a camera are very similar, right? And I did close the gap here a little bit. It's got some waves and such in there. I've got to be careful, because as this moves, so does this. And this piece right here is, and I'll show you later, is what it spreads two little pieces open, and it pushes a lever which then moves the pressure plate away from the film, so when you advance the film it doesn't have to ride on the pressure plate. And when you close this, it opens these up, or vice versa, I can't remember. Yeah, it opens them, and then your pressure plate pushes against the film. So gotta fix that. I don't think you can see. Maybe you can. Got a pretty good bump right there. Okay, I wound up filing that like we talked about a little bit ago, and then I took the shouldered nut and kind of run it along here. And there's some waves. There's one right here, and there were waves up and down on this piece here. So I worked most of those out. There's still some in there, but this is super soft, super easy to tweak and bend, and so I think it's good. Well, I'm calling it good. There's some nicks on the back side that we cleaned up, or I cleaned up. You guys just sit around and watched, I guess. So then I kind of worked this back and forth a few times. Seems to push okay, and it goes around. And up here is where the window is, and when it gets to the tin, it locks. So that's good still. I didn't mess with that timing up. Oh, also I kind of wanted it, kind of tight. I may go a little tighter, because I don't want it, like when, if you catch it on something and you're to actually move the film. So I'll probably play with that a little bit. And then I'll lock down these nuts. And from where they were before, they were pretty much right flush, and that's how it feels now. So I may just go back with that. And then lock those nuts down, and reassemble it. But so this right here is something I was going to point out a little bit ago. Right here, when this slides out of there, it lets that go down, and then when you come back over here, you push. Say now we're on 6. You push a cog. You push a cog right there that spins that 1, and then that releases over here, which now pushes this back up. You can't tell because it's not assembled, but it pushes that plate up, which is over there, that pressure plate, so it can go ahead and hold against the back of the film. So anyway, once we get to that part and put it together, we'll look at it a little closer. But I need to go to the store and get some graphite. That's what was in there, was a powdered graphite lube. So I'm going to do that and lubricate some of the things that look like they should have some lubrication. And then we can put it back together. And hopefully we have a good working camera. And I did go ahead and put tape on that to keep that from disappearing on me. So I think that was worthy plan. Okay, so when I took this off, I just left everything on the shaft like it came off. But if you didn't, let's take it off. You've got that copper washer with a silver flat washer and then a big flat washer on it. So for some reason you didn't know how it went back together, or someday if I take this apart again, I don't remember. And what that does is it creates a little spring right there when you push against. So this will stay down once you're locked it or whatever. So that's the point of that. So anyway, and it's in the unlocked position. So now I just gotta line things up, get this down, and then probably support that back piece to put it together. So anyway, it'd be boring to watch. So 57 hours later, okay. I've got this back together, and it's easier if you put the screws into the body first. And earlier I said there was 4, there's 5. There's one in each corner, one right here, and so I'm gonna have to put some rubber cement, hold that down, get that nice and tidy. But so then you get that, you push this through, flip the lid down, button this up, get this tight. Don't tighten the screws until you have the last one in. Tighten that one first. It pulls everything down nice. Then you can just come around and then tighten them up. And they were really tight. And they're a flat blade, little flat blade guy like that, which is good. I would have preferred to putting them back in with the Phillips, but being flat, because they fill up with glue, you can clean the glue out with, and then, take them out. So then I turned it over, and then these are your locks right here, and there's where we lined right back up. So if you there, see how these right here and right there. So what I did was I pulled these all the way out into the lock position and lined that up with the lock, and it wouldn't slide down on the shoulders, but I got it lined up, put the screw down, and then the screw was able to pull it down flush. You have to be really careful that it actually starts, and you got a long screw, so you got plenty to work with, but you need to make sure that this is clear out in the lock, and that's in the lock on this side here, and then it will kind of slide down in there nice and secure like it's supposed to. So with that, now our next deal is this has got a broken spring, because I think it's supposed to just pop up and I don't know. I'm not probably going to mess with it right now. Probably never actually, but so nice and clear there. That's nice and clear. I guess I didn't check to make sure this slide would go in there. It goes back in there, snaps in nice, pulls out. And this is where it's stored for the camera when you're not using the, when you're shooting film, and then you can take it out when you change backs and what have you. So, now we have to put this back on. And how that works is this piece right here presses against the back of this. And this sits down in here the other way. It's got these notches right here, and then it's got those wheels, those rollers. So this will sit in there under these screws, and the spring, I believe, if I remember right, goes between this tab and the screw head. So this holds it up, and then when you start to, and it didn't drop down. Let me cycle it. We might be out of time. No, it was working. I just didn't hold it. Couldn't do it with the camera. So you have that plate, this pressure plate sitting on here, and it has pressure from the springs pushing it down, and it sets against this. So when you go to advance your film, it drops. See it drop? And then when you cycle through and then come back, pushes it back up. See it drop? Pretty neat, huh? And so then that lets those springs push it down, and then this lifts it back up, and then the film comes off of here. It doesn't even touch that pressure plate, and scoots on across these little rollers and rolls on up on the spool. So it was kind of a pain to get this, and there's actually flat washers. There's 3. They were made out of some sort of a fiber material. So one of those washers comes on top of this spring, on top of this tab, so the spring can press against it and the head of this screw. And then the other 2 are on the bottom. That's how, when I first took it apart, it was. I don't know why, but that's the way it was. I'm guessing that it has something to do with adjusting tension or how deep it drops or something fun like that. So anyway, I'm going to get these. You have to take one side completely loose to be able to put it together. You can manage to wiggle this down under one side, and then you've got to assemble this side, or vice versa. So I think this side being easier to work with, I'll probably try to slide under that and then work this side down. So that's how you do this. And it'll probably take me a while, so we'll be back later. Okay. I have it assembled, and you have to now listen to what I said a minute ago and slide it under. I couldn't get separated between on the little washer. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that it is down all the way. Take the screw and the spring out, and be careful it doesn't go chasing across the room. And then take one flat washer and do that on both sides, put them in a bowl, and then set this down on there, slide it to one side, put your flat washer down, put your, with your tweezers works good, and then put your spring, and then put your screw, grab your tweezers and hold that, line it up, and then start it and get it screwed down, and then just go ahead and tighten it down, and then do the same on the other side, and then tighten them real good, and then you're good to go. And see that? See how that drops that pressure plate? So before I even started trying to get this to work, I couldn't cycle this. It would only go about like that, and that was it. Couldn't do any more than that. So we have made a huge improvement. So I'm going to put the handle back on, and that's just a matter of screwing it in, and then it's got some nuts on the back side, lock nuts. Once you screw it through here, because these are tapped, and then you lock down the lock nuts on the back side, and they actually had a epoxy on them too, so I may put some glue on them, and so that's where we're at. We got some thunder coming. Back together, and we are on film number shot 10, which locks it. Remember that little drop down in there? Flip the switch up, pull it out. Now this will allow you to wind on to finish your deal out. Now we're at load. So now would be safe to pull this off the camera and take the film out right here, and then put in your new roll. So now I have a working film holder. I still got to glue this down, but other than that, now doesn't mean I have a working camera, because my rangefinder is way off, I believe, so I'll have to work on that later. But anyway, I wasn't going to do much with that if I couldn't get a good working back, because they're about as much as if you can find a good one, and I was afraid if I found one it would be as bad as this one. But now, if you have trouble with your film back, just some patience and the right screwdrivers and some tweezers, and just looking at things, you can fix it, or you can at least see what's wrong with it, perhaps. I don't know if this is a common problem or not, but it's the problem this one had, because to begin with, I wish I'd have filmed it, but I didn't. It was on. Couldn't see number 3. What's going on here? I must not have been. Load. 1 dot. 2 dots. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. See how it's sticking out further? That little pin, I should see this notch here. That pin that locks it, when you get to 6 or so, it drops down here, so you can't go in any further. And now, when we go back in, it will drop right into this slot. And I can't pull it back out. And so, the reason that does that way is, like we talked about, spooling from a very big spool over here that's full onto a little spool. It doesn't wrap as fast until you start building up some paper, or some film and paper on that. And so this would be why, well, 2 reasons here. You could not use the longer spool, the 220 film, if this was a 220 instead of a 120 back, if we put a 120 film roll in there, it would fit. And I believe that with this dropping down, it would allow it to move along and press it up just fine. But as the rate of cycling through, instead of having 10, you'd have 20 on that other roll, and your box would be set up for 20, so you would cycle through at a different rate. And so when you hit 10, you're not done with you're done with your film, but you still going to show 20 on your box. So I don't believe that that's a viable source of a. So you're just going to have to go buy whatever is available in 220 film. My thoughts only. So there we go. You can do it. Go fix yours.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see.